Okay, hello and welcome everyone to PFCC Partners Monthly Workshop. Thank you all for joining us this month. We are really excited to have Ray and a few of her patient family advisors from Pomona Valley Hospital Medical Center to talk about their involvement on committees within their organization and really how patient family advisor involvement can improve that overall quality, safety, and patient experience at your organization. So we have a wide variety of registrants today, all the way from staff, facilitators, and I know we have many patient family advisors on today's call as well. So I really appreciate all of you joining today, and please feel free to ask questions and speak up. I know Ray and the team will be happy to answer any questions that you might have throughout today's session. So before we get to Ray, I just had a couple of quick updates from PFCC Partners. But first, I just wanted to check in and remind everyone where you can mute yourself if you are on the computer. If you hover over the bottom of your screen, you will find the mute button, and you can click that if you have some background noise going on.
Center. We are the leader in treatment.
And please don't put us on hold, because then we hear that. I will be monitoring the participants, and if I do hear some background noise and I can find you, I'm going to try to mute you if it is a distraction to the presentation. But we do want questions throughout, so please feel free to make this as interactive as you can. Utilize the chat box. You can also find the chat box by hovering over the bottom of your screen. Chat in any comments or questions, and I will be monitoring that. And Ray, I will bring any questions that I see in there to your attention as well.
Perfect.
Great. And then just really quickly, I know we want to get to Pomona Valley's presentation, but I just wanted to talk a minute about PFCC Partners and then share a couple things that we have going on in the upcoming months. So this is PFCC Partners' mission. We partner with healthcare organizations like Pomona Valley, who will be presenting today, as well as the public, to provide really a collaborative learning community where the sharing of proven methods and successes like what Ray and her team will be sharing today will really help guide the development of sustainable patient-family engagement across the entire healthcare continuum and at all of your organizations as well. We have a lot of different things going on at PFCC Partners. We are trying to build our community as much as we can, really enhancing these monthly workshops to make them really beneficial to everyone in attendance. We have lots of resources online, and I'll share those with you. And we also have some skills development opportunities as well to help, again, enhance the patient-family centered care aspect at each of your organizations. All of that information can be found on our website. It's pfccpartners.com, and I'll chat in a few links in a little while. And also, we do work on many, many contracts, some with the National Coordinating Center and other larger organizations helping to spread patient-family centered care, or person and family-centered care, I should say, across the entire healthcare continuum. And then finally, all of our work comes from that patient-family advisor perspective. Libby Hoy, our founder and CEO, she sits on a variety of committees and boards and organizations serving as that patient-family advisor. Stephen Hoy, our COO as well, he serves as a patient-family advisor. So we come to all of this work from that perspective. And then coming up, I wanted to share our next workshop in October. It's going to be on Friday, October 27th, right before Halloween. We will have Stephanie Stembridge from Memorial Care talking about community collaboration with patients and families. So that should be another really interesting presentation, and I encourage all of you to register for that one when we start to share that information. I also wanted to share with those of you on the call who work for organizations, we do have a new offering. It is the Patient Family Centered Care Work Plan. This is an hour-and-a-half work plan meeting with Libby and myself, where we walk through each aspect of patient and family-centered care and help you to see resources within your organization that you might not have been aware of, and provide you some resources that we have as well to really help enhance the patient family-centered care aspect at your organization. That also comes with 2 hours of coaching that you can use as you wish. And for more information on the work plan and how to sign up for that, you can head to our website. It's pfccpartners.com/workplan. And finally, before we get to Ray, I just wanted to share, you may have seen some of our emails about the conference. I would love to see all of your smiling faces there. Save the date for March 12th of next year. We are going to be at the California Endowment Center in Los Angeles, California again. And we are pleased to partner with HSAG to present the 2018 PFCC conference. Requests for proposals are open and they are due October 13th of this year, so in a little less than a month. You can head to our website, pfccpartners.com/annual conference, to find the link to the request for proposals, and we would love to hear all of the great work that's going on out there that you are all doing. So consider submitting a proposal, and we look forward to seeing you all there. So with that, I am so pleased to welcome one of our really fantastic partners in this work, Ray Ryback from Pomona Valley Hospital Medical Center, and her advisors that she partners with as well, Margaret High and Patricia Garcia. Welcome, Ray, and take it away.
Well, thank you very much. We're really excited to be here this morning. And I don't know how many people are from Southern California, but we're having a glorious September in Southern California. For those of you in other areas, our weather can be incredibly hot, but it's almost like fall here, so it's wonderful. Yeah, it is. I think so. Yeah. So everyone, my name is Ray Ryback. I have the joy and pleasure of working with our Patient and Family Advisory Council, and I have Margaret High here with me, who is our chair, as well as Patricia Garcia. So you will be hearing different voices as the presentation continues. So I'll just jump right in and get started. I think I'm going to begin with, I think Lindsay's going to.
Yeah, you could just let me know when to go.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I'm just going to kind of talk about Joint Commission, CMS, and other patient experience scores that we all have to be looking at, the historical structure of councils, and then we're going to start digging into our process at our hospital, what we've learned, some of our challenges, and basically what has transpired during the initiation of our Patient and Family Advisor Council, as well as they're sitting on various committees. Next slide. So just a little bit about our hospital. We are a 437-bed acute care hospital. We are nonprofit. We just became the newest trauma center for LA County. We see almost 100,000 patients in our emergency department and deliver over 1,000 babies a year. And then, of course, we do have some outpatient facilities, including 4 primary care and 2 urgent care centers, just so that you know a little bit about us. Next slide. So here is a photo, which I get ribbed for all the time because this is an old photo of our advisors. We now actually have 14 patient and family advisors, and we need to get an updated photo, but this is our great group of people. Next slide. And again, kind of wanted to just chat with everyone about why we do this, you know, some of the important issues surrounding patient or person and family-centered care. Of course, AHRQ and their innovation exchange, they had posted some information, and they have a lot of information online. And one of the second bullet point regarding the unrealized potential of patient and family advisors, and how very few institutions have actually taken the step to have advisors sitting inside of their hospital committees and giving direct feedback. So that's one of the goals that we have always had in our council and continue to strive for. Next slide. Of course, the Joint Commission has patient rights. And really, in my view, the whole patient rights chapter is about patient or person and family-centered care. But there are some specific elements of performance that we inform the patient or their support person of visitation rights and making sure that they have someone here supporting them, that we provide the patient or their surrogate decision maker with information, and that we inform the patient or surrogate decision maker regarding unanticipated outcomes of care. And so again, you know, very much a focus on the patient, but then also their support person, their advocate, their family, whoever they feel is the person most appropriate to speak on their behalf. Next slide. EMS, oh, Leapfrog. Leapfrog. It was really interesting when I assisted with answering our Leapfrog survey, the most recent one, they specifically had an indicator that requires patients who are not employed by the organization and family of patients being active participants in safety and quality committees of the hospital. So again, the Leapfrog survey that most everyone participates in does have some requirements and indicators for patients involved in safety and quality committees. Next slide. And then finally, of course, our lovely CMS, which I know many of us partner with very closely. And they are really providing a lot of guidance and helping hospitals and facilities in, you know, recognizing and engaging patients and families in partnering with their care choices, and then also in the overall care and treatment that we provide our community. Next slide. So let's talk about Pomona Valley Hospital, because we love to do that. So our hospital actually initiated our Patient and Family Advisory Council in 2014. The year before, just as a little background, our hospital had a steering committee, Patient and Family Centered Care Practice Steering Committee, where we kind of did a self-assessment of all of our patient and family-centered care practices within the organization. And one big gap was in the initiation or the existence of a Patient and Family Advisory Council, which we had none. As part of the process, my department, which is risk management and patient relations, was provided the challenge and the wonderful responsibility of building our council and growing it. So the first year, we did our recruiting, just again, as some knowledge and information. Recruiting was done through referrals by our management team. It was through referrals through our complaint process. We did have a few referrals from our volunteer service. First year, we actually started with 6 advisors, and then 2 of them quickly dropped off because I think we were not clear on what our expectations were, and then they as well didn't understand what was involved. At our council, you know, one of the requirements is to attend our monthly meetings. And then one of the very first things that we decided in our charter and as our goal is that every advisor would also sit inside of some hospital committee or work group. And so as our advisors have come on to the group, they have been assigned to and participating in various committees, which I'll kind of step you through. Our advisors started on committees that very first year. I will tell you, the first year building our council was a little bit of a slow process. We did need to develop our charter and provide training, which I have to give a plug for Libby and her PFCC partners, which assisted in that training for our advisors. And about, I would say, mid-year of that very first year, we did have advisors sitting on the hospital-wide customer service team, on rights of the individual functional team, and on our emergency preparedness and environment of care teams. All of these assignments, the advisors were invited to join the committees by the chair of the committees themselves. So I want to stop talking for a minute, and so I'm going to let Margaret, who was one of the very first advisors to sit on the hospital-wide customer service team, just to talk about what that was about and how that worked at the very beginning.
Thank you, Ray. I want to back it up just a little so that those listening know that that first year what we did was we developed our charter. And so that did take some time to develop that charter because we were just meeting once a month. And so as we developed that charter, it took about 6 months between the training with Libby and developing the charter. And so then once we got invited to be on the committees, which I volunteered for the PIT crew, the process improvement team, as myself and another advisor, Beth Bingham, we were invited to be on the process improvement team. One thing that we noticed right away is that we were readily accepted. There was immediate acceptance by the entire team. There was no resistance. They were very welcoming. And I think if you're going to be developing patient-family advisory council, it's almost critical that your hospital is really accepting of your patient-family advisors, because if we would have been met with any resistance, I think it would have been very difficult for us to really kind of.
Well, that's a problem.
And so that was kind of like our first experience. We were kind of like the ones who really started, getting our toes wet in the water, so to speak. And so we, volunteered and made comments in that meeting. So we continued to attend that meeting, and then that meeting was, and that group was very transitional because they took on a whole new process as time went on as well, which actually involved a new survey, using new software here at the hospital, the Prestini software, and so on. And we'll discuss that later.
All right, thank you. And then before we move on to the next slide, as I had mentioned, these were early assignments for our advisors. The customer service team, the advisors were invited through our VP, who sits on our council, Vice President of Administration Lee Cornell, who invited the advisors into that group. Rights of the individual functional team, I happen to be the facilitator for that group. And so for any of you thinking about how do I get into the committee structure, look at who your champion or your facilitator of the council is, because most likely that person will sit on various committees. And again, it's just an easy entree to begin that committee structure process. From there, it was, I don't know, right after a presentation that we made to our management team about our council, that then we got an invitation to join the Emergency Preparedness and Environment of Care Committee. And again, that was a request from their chair. So again, I think how the advisors get introduced and invited into the committee is highly important as well. So next slide. So I wanted to just kind of talk about our different advisors and kind of the stuff that they have done or how they've gotten into the various committees. As I just mentioned, Rights of the Individual functional team. She was invited by me, more or less. Her name is Deborah Klein. And Deborah has been an incredible member of that group and, again, has been on that team since 2014. She has participated in a lot of other work groups and other PI projects as part of that committee assignment. Margaret High, as Margaret was just talking about, and Elizabeth Bingham, again, got invited to the Housewide Customer Satisfaction team. And again, as Margaret mentioned, that has kind of changed and shifted their focus. But again, our advisors have been very flexible in how they're working inside of our committees as well, and understanding how in particularly larger hospitals, things can kind of change and refocus from time to time. Ken Bartow and Brad Sell, the photo that you see there is actually Brad Sell. They are both part of the Environment of Care and Emergency Preparedness teams. They attend the committee meetings. They provide input to our committees from the patient and family perspective. This is really helpful, especially with our emergency preparedness activities, because they participate as if they're a patient or family member of a patient. And so when we're doing disaster drills and such, they can give input about what it's like from the family perspective, which many times we miss. One of the important input that Ken provided was during a decontamination exercise. He has an medical device, and we had never really thought about how we would decontaminate patients' medical devices and how that would work, and would we switch them out with a clean device, or exactly how that process would transpire. So Ken was helpful in helping us recognize we had a gap there, and helped us develop a process for that. Next slide. So then we began to grow, and people started learning more about our council, and our council advisors were providing really great input into these committees. And so then Elizabeth Bingham was invited into our palliative care committee. The palliative care committee, just so that you know, we are a joint commission accredited palliative care program. We have a very active palliative care team. Ms. Bingham is also a minister of a local church, and so she provides an amazing amount of input into the palliative care committee. In that second year, the next request that we received was for an advisor to participate in our Falls Task Force. Claudette Branham said that she was interested in doing that. And then maybe just to take a step back here, when we do get a request for an advisor, basically what I do is put a notice out to all of our advisors to say, hey guys, here's something fun for you to do. And I'll find out from them who is most interested. I have never, I don't think, actually assigned anyone or said you have to do this or anything along those lines. So far, it has always been the advisors who lined up with what their passions are or what their interests are into the hospital committee. So again, I think that's a really important point of setting your advisors inside of committees. So Claudette has actually been an amazing addition to the Falls Task Force. I don't know how many of you may have that sort of a group, but in our hospital, we have a task force that meets, I believe, every other month. They actually review every single fall event that happens in our hospital. So imagine we have our advisor, a community member, sitting there actually going through those internal event reports with us. again, giving us guidance, input, maybe a different way of looking at things in order to change our practices. Near the end of the program, I'll give you a little bit of information on some of our fall data, which we believe having that patient and family presence in our task force really makes a difference. Another interesting thing that Claudette participated in 2016, I believe, we participated in an ECRI or ECRI insight survey on falls. And so we actually had our advisor participating in that falls survey. I'm not sure how many other entities have done that, but I thought that that would be, you know, interesting to have that input from the advisor rather than just generally our staff or physician. So then in that second year, as kind of an expansion of the work that Margaret was doing with the customer service team, we had an invitation for several advisors to join the emergency department customer satisfaction team. Now, I don't know how you guys feel about emergency departments, and some of you who work in hospitals or advisors even, you know that emergency departments are very busy and can generate a lot of issues and concerns. And so having our advisors on the customer satisfaction team was really helpful. Both Janet Evans and Linda Vogel are both members of a local retirement community here in Claremont, which is right next to Pomona. I think that they have 3,000 residents, or they have a very large number of residents there, and they are a great addition to our team, and especially in the emergency department, because they do have a very heavy focus individually and personally to improve the care and treatment of our senior community. And so they have been very vocal inside of that customer service team about ways that we can improve our care and services for our seniors in our community. So, and again, they were invited to join and have been just welcomed with open arms. Many of their comments are immediately implemented and used to improve the treatment in the emergency department. Next slide. So in our third year, these are some of our more recent committee engagements. Patricia Garcia, again, we had a request from the ethics committee to have an advisor. Our ethics committee does have several community members that sit on that group, but the committee really felt that having the special training and knowledge of our patient and family advisors in that committee would really help them. So I'm going to stop talking again for a minute and let Patricia tell you a little bit about her work on the ethics committee and her input regarding that.
Hi, everybody. First, I just want to tell you about a little bit on how I joined the committee. So I was a caregiver and advocate for my folks who lived to be 92 and 91. So during their visits here at the hospital, I wanted to make sure that they received the best possible care. So I would observe and see things that maybe needed some improvement. And I had a friend here that worked in management, and I would let her know. And at the time, I didn't know that we had this PFA council. So she recommended that I apply, and I did, and I'm so glad that I did to, work with a group of dedicated.
Oh, we are too.
A group of dedicated, volunteers who want to help to improve the quality and safety of care here for the patients. So I got involved with the ethics committee. We meet on a monthly basis, and then in between we meet for different cases that might arise to discuss unrepresented patients that come in that could be like John Doe's at the time, or patients that have no family So the committee, the social workers, they try to do a thorough search on finding a family member, and if they can't do that within a certain time frame, then we, the committee, get together and review the cases.
That's good. That's good.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, it's Ray again. I was going to ask Patricia a question. So, are you working on a project in the ethics committee?
Okay, yes. So I'm working on updating the ethics consultation brochure. So I've been doing some thorough research on the intranet and looking at what other hospitals have on theirs. I think ours was too maybe busy and needed to be, the language needed to be made and simpler for people to read and understand. So I've been working with that. I've had some challenges with that and bringing it back to the committee, and then everybody has to be in agreement to the changes that are being made. So so I think we've kind of come to
an agreement.
An agreement of moving forward, and we'll present it, I believe, next week to the committee again.
Thanks, Patricia. So, and that's a really good point. You know, sometimes working in these committees can be frustrating. You know, advisors have an idea or a suggestion or provide input, and, you know, maybe they want to see that happen or whatever input be implemented right away. And it does take time sometimes. As Patricia said, you know, everybody's got an opinion in the committee, and they all have to have their little 2 cents in there. And so she has had, you know, quite a time putting together all of those comments and coming up with a solution. So again, we're really happy to have her as part of the ethics committee. As Patricia was talking about, a portion of what the ethics committee does is we do assist with these patients who have no family, friends, and have no one to decide for them. And so we do have a multidisciplinary team that convenes to discuss their plan of care. And I have to tell you that from my perspective, it is an amazing impact to know that we have someone from the outside, you know, a community member, a real patient advocate, someone who's really thinking about the patient as part of those discussions to help us feel like we're heading in the right direction and doing what's ethically and morally right for our patients. So moving on, in the 3rd year again, Donna Hebner was asked to join the customer satisfaction team for labor and delivery. Again, the customer satisfaction focus was kind of growing and expanding. Just like I said before, I presented it to the group, and Donna was one of the people who felt like she wanted to participate in that group. And also she's part of the emergency customer satisfaction team as well. She's joined that. Then again, more recently, we have initiated a workplace violence prevention committee. Again, for some of the advisors, you may or may not know, but just in case, if you don't, there is a new California regulation that requires hospitals to provide training to our staff to help them recognize and reduce the escalating behaviors of patients, and then hopefully reduce the violent behaviors of patients and visitors within our hospitals. So Margaret Hyde, who is again here, has been participating in that committee, again, providing that guidance from that patient or family perspective as we're talking about how to work with our patients and families to make our hospitals safer. So Margaret, you want to say a few things about that?
Well, I have to tell you that this has been a real eye-opener for me because I never knew that patients and families could be so violent. I mean, it was just really, it was an education for me. And the one thing that I've been really trying to promote within the group is that we really need to have a patient-family code of conduct, and it needs to be actually posted in the facility here in several places, and we're putting this as a point on the agenda. It's going to be a point of discussion where we're going to have this and where it's going to be passed out. So that's really next on our agenda. Yeah. So I'm really happy to have this as a point because I think the patients really need to have and take responsibility for themselves here, because several of our associates have gotten hurt to the point that there have been police reports and actual injuries, and that shouldn't be happening.
Right. Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to me, when Margaret made the comment a few months ago about, well, what about our patients and families? What are they told, about how they're expected to behave? And although we do have patient responsibilities, and there are certain, little notices that are in like patient guides and such, but there's nothing really visible about how we expect our patients and families to behave and what happens when they don't behave according to our guidelines. And so again, I think it was an important point, something that we don't think about as caregivers or as administrators of hospitals, but I think, again, will be a really valuable part of our overall workplace violence prevention program. So again, we really appreciate your help there. Next slide.
I just want to say something here that may be coming up a question, but one of our things that we did in recruitment, and you're probably thinking, well, how did you get to year 2, year 3, and we added these advisors, is at the end of each year, each calendar year, we actually put out a bulletin in our newsletter, our associate newsletter, and we sent out and said, anyone interested in joining our Patient Family Advisory Council, contact Ray. Or if you have any suggestions, as managers, contact Ray. And so with that, we did receive several suggestions, and that's how we came, and we actually interviewed them. And from there, we let them know of the time commitment. And some people were interested, and some people weren't. So that's how we kind of sifted through them. So just in case you had that question. Thank you.
Okay, next slide. So what happens for all of you who may be working on this or thinking about working on participating in committees? The engagement starts growing. As I had mentioned with the Rights of the Individual functional team, Deborah Klein has been involved in a number of work groups that have kind of come out of that. One of the important work groups that both Elizabeth and Deborah participated in was our End of Life Option Act work group. And again, I'm not sure how many of you are aware, but last year, about 16 months ago or so, a new law came into effect in the state of California that allows patients to work with their physicians to be prescribed life-ending medications. And so our hospital, every hospital had to decide how they were going to react to this new law and how they were going to participate or not participate in the activities of the law. And so again, we did have 2 of our advisors participating in that work group to help us develop our policy. We actually made a presentation to our board of directors, as a matter of fact, last year, trying again to determine how we were going to respond to this new law. So that was incredibly valuable. And then more recently, Deborah Klein has been participating again through the Rights of the Individual functional team on a work group to improve our advanced directive process. And I'm not going to get into detail about the work group itself, but again, we needed to have that input from the patient and the families on improving in our documentation and communication of advanced directives. She was incredibly valuable, and at every meeting she would bring us back to, well, what is the important thing about advanced directives? It's not about us being compliant with it, it's about us following our patients' wishes and having a good process to document patients' advanced directives and communicating, most importantly, throughout the care team. so Deborah has been really instrumental in that. And then just the other day, on Wednesday, we did the rollout of the improvement project. And we actually had 2 of our advisors at our manager meeting rollout presentation on this new project. And it was really great because they were able to provide input from the patients and families' perspective about advanced directives. Next slide. So what does it do to the committees and the work groups when an advisor is sitting there? You know, it does a lot of different things. And again, I think that to start with, you always have to set the stage correctly. As we had mentioned, you know, having the advisors invited to join the team and making sure you have an advisor who has the passion and the interest to be on that particular team. But it does change the dynamics. Now you have a patient or a family member of a patient sitting in the room with you as you're talking about whatever it is that the committee is talking about. That is a new process. The committee needs to be supportive and comfortable in that. They need to understand the role of the patient and family advisor. It's to give input from the advisor or, you know, the patient and family perspective. Again, inside of those committees, the advisor is sitting right there. As I had mentioned on our fall task force, Claudette is sitting there reading incident reports of fall events. And those are highly confidential issues. But again, our advisors are bound by our confidentiality statement, and they know that, you know, they keep those discussions within those committee meetings.
I'd like to add just one little tidbit here. And that's one thing that the advisors really need to understand is the confidentiality. And number 2, that you may have come from a point of issue with the hospital, and you're not to bring that chip on your shoulder to the meetings. You're here to create change in a positive environment. And I think that's what's real critical here is that this is about creating positive change.
Very good. Yeah. Another important thing is that when there's work being done in the committee, and let's say it's an educational brochure, as Patricia's working on, the advisor on the committee can bring information back into the council meeting and get additional feedback from our advisors. And that happens quite often where they'll come in and say, you know, we're working on this, what do you think about it? And then again, we'll get additional feedback that then is brought back into that committee structure. Next slide. So some of these issues we've kind of touched on a little bit, but ways that we have felt that we were successful, again, is identifying and assigning the correct participation. And again, as Margaret said, from the very beginning of interviewing and adding in a new advisor, the advisor needs to understand the time constraints, the expectations. Many times these committee assignments turn into a lot more than what they thought it was going to be. And so they do need to understand that there is definitely some time that they have to spend, that there could be lots of research and reading to do to learn about various topics that the committees are working on. Again, as I had mentioned, I'm pretty sure every single assignment that has been made here was based on the advisor's interest and passion. It wasn't something that we just told them they had to do. Again, assigning per their needs. We have some advisors who are not interested at all in going to a morning meeting. They don't want to get up early. They want to sleep in. They're retired and they're over it already, okay? Now, we have other advisors who wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning or whatever they do, go work out, and they're ready to be at that 7:30 meeting. So again, you know, be thoughtful about your advisor's needs, what works best for them, how much time is involved. Again, some advisors have more limited availability of time. So if you have a group that maybe just meets quarterly, that might be a better fit for certain advisors. And then again, what kind of engagement? Is it a short term, like just a little work group that's going to meet for 6 months? Or is it a committee that will meet forever? So that again is important. And then the advisor skill set. Number one, most advisors have to have some ability to speak in a group or within the council meeting, but then again, they may have other important skills. Patricia is our researcher. She loves to do research, which is great. Margaret, who is also our chair, writes articles for our hospital to put into our newsletters. Many of our advisors have other special skills and speaking skills that we use as part of those committee assignments. Next slide. So what are the things that the challenges that we've encountered? And there have been many, but we just kind of work through them as we work through them. So again, you have to have clear goals for your advisors. Again, when they come into the group, they do agree that they will come to the monthly meetings, again, as much as possible. Sometimes they miss. But then also they will, in addition to that, sit on a hospital committee. So they are making that commitment. Now, I don't expect that they're going to go into a committee on, month 2 of their advisor role, but usually within that first year, the expectation is that they're sitting inside of a committee structure. When you have your advisors join any committee or work group, they definitely need to have a champion or a person sitting with them to help them through those first couple of meetings, to help them understand the jargon, to understand the agenda, some of the goals of the committees, and then kind of help navigate them through. And then usually the advisors, after the first couple, 3 or 4 meetings, they've figured it out and they can kind of do it on their own. And then again, what we've mentioned multiple times is the committees and work groups. I believe it has to be an invitation for the advisor to join rather than us imposing ourselves into work groups and committees. Next slide.
We're going to talk about the pushback.
Okay. So we have had a little bit of pushback from, some different committees. I know one committee that I've been really wanting to get an advisor on is our patient safety committee, which we don't have an advisor. And there's a lot of input about, again, the confidential nature of the meeting, that we're just airing all of our dirty laundry, which, we do talk about problems, of course. And so there is some challenge in getting advisors into some of our, I guess, more highly confidential sort of meeting structures. And then did you want to say something else?
Well, at one time, the board of directors here has a question about our PFA, I guess, would you say, advisory council, because we had an article put out in the paper here, and they were kind of questioning our activities. And so they decided to have a member of their board sit on the PFA advisory council because they were really concerned about what we were actually doing with a member on all these committees, and that maybe we're getting too powerful. Would you think?
That might have been something like that.
Something to that effect. Yeah. They were just, I would say, concerned, and in quotes. And so then the member got on the council, and it was like, oh, well, this is what you do. Well, then they gave us the rubber stamp, and we were all, I would say, kosher.
Yeah. Well, then what's interesting, and Margaret and Patricia may not know this, but last week, that advisor member called me just to kind of touch bases, to let me know we wouldn't be able to make it to the next meeting, but then also to say to me, quote, please let me know what I can do from a board member's perspective to help grow your council. So, quote unquote. So that was a good feeling. So again, having board involvement and certainly their knowledge of your activities are highly important. Next slide. Okay, so does it really make a difference? I don't know, unless you have a specific PI project that's run only by your PFA advisors. Can you say that this advisor's activity in this committee did this improvement or resulted in this specific improvement? Now, having an advisor in a committee structure, generally they're part of the committee, they're part of a group. They're not doing all that work just by themselves. But what I can share with you is during the time from 2014 to 2016, where Claudette Branham was part of our Falls Task Force, we have actually had a 21% reduction in our inpatient falls, which again is incredible. And then even better, in our emergency department, again, I think the staff is focusing, rather than just thinking about the task and getting the job done and the patient being the next, broken arm down the hall, I think you're really thinking about our patients as real people and their family members as real care partners. And with that, they have had a 38% reduction in their total patient complaints from 2014 to 16. Now, again, any people from hospitals would give a big round of applause for that, because we all know that reducing complaints in the emergency department is a really hard thing to do. But we've made those reductions, and actually 2017, they're holding that reduction at that level. So we're not seeing a big spike up. So that is the difference in our quality of care and patient experience by having our advisors working within our hospital structure. Next slide. So I think that concludes our portion.
Well, do we want to talk about?
Oh, Margaret, yeah.
Well, we really need to talk about our next challenge, and that is patient rounding.
Right.
Just real quickly, so we can get this in, which is our new frontier, and that is that we are now, as patient advisors, will be doing patient rounding on the floors. And Patricia, you've already started that.
Well, I've been on the floor to meet the staff and been to the meetings, staff meetings. I did shadowing with one of the nurses so I could see what they do.
Good. And I've met with the volunteer office because I want to have those patient rounding hours separate, so we can actually account for those hours separate. But as patient advisors, we're actually going to be rounding separately and actually meeting with the patients and actually asking 3 of the particular press gaining questions that are particular to those units. And we're going to be seeing if we can actually target those questions, if the patients will be more at home with us with those answers. So then we'll report back to each of those units and see if they can actually make a difference before those patients leave and bring up their scores.
Very good.
So hopefully we can make those changes.
Yeah, and again, that is kind of the next iteration of the work that Margaret's been doing with the customer satisfaction team, that now we're kind of expanding it and growing it out into a direct advisor engagement directly with our patients and families. So thank you for mentioning that, Margaret.
Okay.
So I think we're open for any questions that anyone might have.
Great. Yeah, and this is Lindsay. I just wanted to thank you, Ray, Margaret, and Patricia. I think this is kind of eye-opening for a lot of organizations to see how far the spread of patient-family engagement can go within their own organizations. It's amazing that you have so many advisors participating in so many different ways. I think it's really inspiring to see. So thank you for sharing. And yes, does anyone have any questions for Ray or Patricia or Margaret? Please feel free to speak up, or you can chat in the chat box. And while we're waiting, I just had one quick question about kind of the education and preparation that happens prior to joining a committee or a project. I know I heard Margaret say that you really didn't know how violent patients and families could be. So what kind of preparation goes into before you join a certain committee? I know you talked a little bit about clear expectations and clear goals, but is there anything else that goes into that?
No, although that's actually kind of a good point. Maybe we can improve on that a little bit. We do every advisor goes through our 4-hour training, right? And so in the past, Libby has assisted with that, which now I'm handling.
You took it on.
They go through that. I know that 4-hour training, and from my viewpoint, I think that prepares them. And then again, we do, usually wait for them to be an advisor for a short time, maybe 6, so that they're feeling their role a little bit more completely. But that is a really good point. And I think, again, having that champion in the committee with them, maybe even having a meeting ahead of time to go over the agenda, and maybe some of the topics, so that the advisor is a little bit more well prepared. So we'll take that as a suggestion.
Great. Yeah, of course. And I love that you have a champion partnering with an advisor, especially to the first couple meetings until they're comfortable. That is so beneficial. And then I would, if you aren't doing it already, I'm sure you are, but having that follow-up just to make sure that the advisor has everything that they need and understands really what's going on. I know it takes a lot of time because you're taking in a lot of information, but very good. And we do have some chat questions coming in. The first from Eileen: what were some of the specific recommendations of advisors on the ED committee and Falls committee?
Yeah, now the Falls committee, I'm not there all the time, but I know that Claudette, because what happens is the advisors report into the council every month. So they're reporting in about their committee involvement. And I know Claudette had made comments regarding informing and educating the patient and the family about all the things that we're doing to
color coding and everything.
Yeah, all the different fall. I'm sorry, I'm not coming up with the right words, but the fall precautions, that's the right word, that we put in place. So the use of the socks, making sure that they understand about the call button. If a patient really shouldn't be getting out of bed to go to the toilet, making sure that we're doing a much better job explaining to the patients and families of the why they're doing that. On the emergency department committee, again, I don't necessarily sit in those committees all the time, although I do go on occasion. But I know that Janet and Linda have reported back that they've made various comments regarding I don't want to say sequestering, because that's not a good term, but separating senior patients from all of our other population, like kids and babies who, believe it or not, yell and scream, or some of our behavioral health patients who can create a lot of havoc. And so we've made those changes. In addition, they've made comments about how to better distract children. And different ideas about that, having a little coloring area and stuff for the kids to kind of keep them busy. So again, they're not causing commotion inside of the emergency department. So those are just kind of a couple of the ones I can think of right off the top of my head.
Great. Thank you for sharing. Did anyone have a question they wanted to speak up about?
I do. I actually put her on the chat box there. But
okay.
do you have any young council members? Anyone less than 70? And if so,
okay. Well, the ladies that are sitting right here are under 70 for sure.
Right. So no, I'm not trying to offend any. Yeah.
We do have one student. Actually, she's a nursing student.
Awesome.
who must be in her she must be 24 or something.
Mhm.
But her folks, her parent, I think her father had been a patient here, and so yeah,
Okay.
and we do. That was one of the challenges that we saw early on, because we did have a lot of white females. I mean, just straight up say it, and females. But we have 4 men of our 14.
And we're now multicultural.
Yeah, and we're now multicultural. We have lots of different cultures inside of our advisory council. So thank you for that. And the young people.
So how did you recruit them? Because that's the challenge that we're having in recruiting. And again, not being disrespectful, but we also want to get the other perspectives. Especially with the millennials, we want to understand what makes them tick, right? And how can we improve our processes to meet their needs. So we, actually all our members, are older, so we get that perspective. But I have been lucky enough to have a couple of a 23 and a 27-year-old. And they really brought good ideas to what the rest of the members were talking about. And our members are, computer savvy, and they have all the devices. So there were very good ideas coming from the millennials, if you will, on how we can improve some things for the older generation. So I think it would be a nice balance to have them, but I don't know where to go with this one. It's very challenging.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I think too, as the facilitator, I felt a little uncomfortable, like targeting certain people.
Correct, right? You have to be respectful, and you have to find a line.
Groups. And again, that felt a little biased,
Right,
but that's what I did. So, I would certainly suggest talking to areas that have younger people, looking at your complaints that involve younger people.
Okay.
That younger people are making. You might identify a person or two who would be a really good fit.
Yeah, and
that's a good idea.
Yeah, this is Lindsay. This is such a great conversation, and I encourage you to keep having it. I just wanted to recognize that we are a few minutes over on the workshop. So I would be happy, Sonia, to get you connected with Ray so you can continue this conversation. I think it's a really important one.
Would you please, if you don't mind? Thank you.
Yes, we definitely will. And I think that's a good point of a continued conversation that we can have, and possibly consider a workshop on really garnering the diversity of each of your populations on your advisory councils. So really thank you for that, that conversation starter. I really appreciate it. But I do want to be respectful of everyone's time, and I thank you so much, Ray and Margaret and Patricia. This was so valuable, and you've really started to, it already can see, spark a lot of interest and start conversation. So I really appreciate you taking the time to deliver this workshop for us.
Thank you very much. Our pleasure.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.